where it really took a dive and Ed took hold of you in a much more dominant way?
So are you asking when was there a specific point when I really knew that Ed took over?
Was it, or it was so gradual?
No, for me it was actually very fast, very soon. And I started on a healthy, innocent diet before I went back to college my sophomore year, so in the summer. And I would say in the summer I was still at a healthy point mentally and physically, socially. And when I went back to school, I lived in my sorority house, and I was still trying to show my horse, full time around the world and around the nation, and still pushing myself to get a 4.0. And that's when it just completely lost control. It spiraled out of control, and I knew that, I knew deep down that I had something wrong, but it wasn't until my family intervened and actually, put me in a treatment center that I realized I had an eating disorder.
I mean, did you feel a need that you need to be thinner at that point? You cannot eat because of this or that reason?
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like you were a pretty normal girl at that, to that point.
Yeah. And I think that was one reason that myself and my parents were in such denial. We're like, no, Betsy's happy. She's leading a good life. It seemed like I would have everything that I would need, but it never seemed good enough to me. I always seemed like I had to push myself more. I always had to be better. I could do better. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like getting a 4.0 wasn't good enough. I'd start taking harder classes to get a 4.0. It just builds off of each other. And in my eating disorder, I was never had like a goal weight, but when I would always be like, yeah, I could gain a few pounds, but I don't really need to. Like I'm probably okay. So, I mean, it's really psychological.
But when you guys were at that low weight, and if you looked at pictures of yourself, what did you see? Did you not see how thin you were?
I thought that I looked disgusting. I actually did. Like I could look at pictures and see that I looked gross, but it didn't matter to me. I didn't care, because Ed was more important than that. Which sounds so odd, but I didn't care. I'd be like, yeah, I look gross, but I don't care.
What I saw in my mirror at home was not what I actually looked like. When I would go past a store window, or I'm at the mall and I go past a mirror, I go, ooh, who is that person? And I never recognized that person as me. So my mirror was very, very friendly to me, but other mirrors I could not even look at.
Very, very distorted. Back there?
I was just wondering what you should not say when you're intervening. There's so many things that you could say, but what are the key things not to say that would be more triggers? Like obviously weight and what you should look like, but what should you definitely not say?
Trust me, there's a lot more you shouldn't say than you should.
And even though
That's my dad.
He's been to every family therapy program in the country. It's an interesting question, and I can't actually give you a template of things not to say, because if you're talking about a friend or a sister or some brother or something, it depends on which stage of treatment and recovery the person is in. There is no, and it depends who. Every single person with an eating disorder is individual. There's not a template. I wish it was that easy. This is the most difficult illness to treat. That's why there's so few professionals that treat it. Besides the high liability. I wish I could answer that. there are tips for what, how to deal with people with eating disorders and how to raise children more healthy and stuff like that. Like a couple of the tips I gave you if you work with young people, or, but if you have a specific person, I can't even tell you that because I would need to know them and work with them. When I work with patients in therapy, I actually have to establish the trust and rapport and learn their rules in their head first before I even help their families. Parents always come in, or loved ones, and say, okay, what should I do? And this would be in the first session. I don't have a clue. I haven't even done the consult yet. So I don't know. Everyone's different. So I'm really sorry I can't answer that. Bruce?
I think the easiest way to answer that is...
Don't talk to him.
You try that.
You cannot address and talk about anything that has anything to do whatsoever with that disorder as a parent.
No. Well,
at least for the start, because I don't care what you say.
It depends where they are when they come into treatment, though. You know that.
I agree, but I'm just saying.
Oh, Bruce.
I mean, Grandpa comes in. You need to put a little meat on those bones. I mean, it's the most innocent thing in the world.
Your daughter was also, by far, never mind. I almost quit.
I know.
Nobody's ever made me do that before.
There are so many things as a parent or a friend that you cannot possibly grasp how it offends the sick person, because you can't think that way.
If you say hello, this is for real. It sounds like a joke, but I'm just using you because I can joke with you. Now, I can joke with all of you. I joke with you guys all the time. But if I said hello to Betsy, I would say, this happened for real with a former patient of mine years ago. I came in and said hi to her, and I said, what's that word that you say when there's a pregnant woman? You're glowing. But you can glow when you're happy, and you know what I mean? And I knew she wasn't pregnant or anything, but I said, my God, you look so like you're glowing today, because she was in a really good mood, and I hadn't seen her in a good mood. She was in my group therapy, and that next week in group accused me, you know what I'm talking about, accused me of calling her, telling her she looked pregnant. Because I used the word glowing. Her face was glowing. I don't even look at my patients' bodies in therapy. I wouldn't. Trust me, that's not something I want to do. I said, oh my God, you're glowing. You look so happy and bright today. Because I used the word glowing, she twisted that all up and told the group how pissed she was at me because I said that she looked pregnant. So this is really, really, it's very insidious. It's deep-seated stuff. So Bruce, you're right. When you say hello the wrong way, it doesn't even have to be about their illness. So I can't tell you what to say. You get it? Not unless I know the situation and the person and your relationship. What you might say to a sister is different than what mom might say to a daughter.
Oh, that's very true.
It's what?
That's very true.
Yeah, that's right. Go ahead. Tell the audience. Right, what mom says and what dad says, what boyfriend says, girlfriend says, different.
I say the same thing, gets taken totally different.
That is correct. So the rules are different for every family member, every friend, every boyfriend, every girlfriend. It's exhausting. But anyway.
One thing I want to say to your question a little bit is maybe one way from a perspective, I know at least for me, and I think a lot of people with eating disorders, a commonality is anxiety and depression. And I think, and I even went to counseling once before for kind of anxiety, and I don't know if you can approach, if they have other issues in their life, that you make it not about, because typically an eating disorder is not about, like it's not about the weight, it's typically about something else. That's a behavior we use as some mechanism for an underlying issue. So if you could approach them and maybe focus on more trying to help them with their issue or their anxiety or depression, maybe that would help.
Yes.
You felt that Shannon was your sister?
Yes.
Is that her name? You felt that she wanted help.
Oh, yes, yes.
Did you also want help? Did you?
Interesting. These three, I asked them to speak because they've done so incredibly well in treatment. So, but they were incredibly, incredibly sick to begin with. So they know the whole range. And they know the head. And they come from three different perspectives. Not just age, I'm not talking about age groups, but they're all different. But they're all the same because the common denominator is control. But they all did want help. What I'm not going to get into, but I'll just mention, is there are different subsets of eating disorders. And I haven't, the research, no research has talked about this. But I don't have time to do the research. But I will tell you that when I mentioned this to a colleague a few years ago, she said, "Oh my God, that's brilliant. You got to do the research on that and write it in a journal." Well, I don't have time. But there are, because I work with all eating disorders, there are different subsets of people with eating disorders. There are those that don't want to get better because they like it. They think it's status symbol. They really think it's like, what's the word? They think they glorify it. Not these people. I would not have them up here if that was the case. So there are subsets.
Shannon saw different doctors, dietitians, psychologists. She went and just tinkered around. And so when I say help, I guess she wanted to self-help. She did every book, everything she could possibly try to read to think that she could do it on her own is what she tried. So, you know, when we had approached her about talking to Dr. Susie, when my dad did, she said, her normal answer, "Oh, I'll think about it." We got that over and over. So every time it got to the point of where our hope started going, you got set up for false hope, because for the family members, you know that you want to believe, and then you just stop believing because for Shannon's sake, she never would follow through seriously with any one treatment, and she refused an inpatient treatment. And again, at the age of 36, our hands were tied.
I think I don't know,